Microphone. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. My name is Stacy Copeland, and I am an assistant professor of media studies in the Faculty of Arts here at University Groningen, and I'm your host for tonight. On behalf of Studium Generale and the Faculty of Arts, I want to start us off with a warm welcome to Dr. Hannah McGregor, who is joining us all the way from Canada and is one of my longest collaborators, good friend and mentor, and I'll get a little mushy about that later. But on behalf of Studium Generale and Faculty of Arts, a brief bit about Studium Generale to start us off, and then about this lecture, and then I will let you know some practical notes for the next hour and a half together. So, Studium Generale is a joint initiative of the University of Groningen and Hansa University of Applied Sciences, and it's all about bringing people together around ideas at the intersection of science, culture, and society through lectures, films, debates, and more. And very briefly, because I am a history nerd, Studium Generale in Groningen actually has its roots in the period after the Second World War, when there was a renewed push for broader interdisciplinary education, something that could connect academic knowledge to broader societal and cultural questions. The first Groningen lecture series began in 1946, and so as we're sitting in this room together, also a very historical space, thinking about this long history that we are now a part of and engaging in this space together. So before we begin, a couple quick practical notes. If you don't want to miss any of the upcoming lectures, make sure to check out the Studium Generale website, sign up and subscribe to their newsletter. Tonight's event is in English and is being streamed online as well. You'll notice some cameras around the room. And if you could please, for that and for being in the space together, turn your phones on silent. Feel like, we know these things now. Tonight's lecture is part of a two-part series called Look at Her, which explores how film and advertising construct and circulate types of femininity, and how rereading familiar pop culture narratives can reveal what those representations enforce and what they might undo. So tonight's speaker, Hannah McGregor, is an associate professor and director of publishing at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, Canada. And their work sits at the intersection of publishing and social change, ranging from the politics of magazines and popular culture to the world of academic podcasting. I've had the pleasure of co-directing the Amplify Podcast Network, a scholarly podcast network with Hannah over the past few years, during which her pilot podcast, Secret Feminist Agenda, became the first peer-reviewed academic podcast. They're also the co-host of Material Girls, a scholarly podcast about pop culture, and Witch Please, a feminist discussion of the Harry Potter series, among many other podcasting endeavors. So they are also the author of several books, including A Sentimental Education, Podcast or Perish, and most relevant for tonight, Clever Girl, a queer feminist reevaluation of Jurassic Park. So in Clever Girl, Jurassic Park, Hannah invites us to take a film that many of us know almost by heart, Jurassic Park, pop culture icon, and ask what radical readings might be hiding in plain sight. What happens if we read the dinosaurs not only as a spectacle or monsters, but as figures for gendered power, engineered, controlled, commodified, and then crucially breaking free? And what might that say about profit-driven systems, man-made disasters, and the stories we tell about survival? So the evening will run. We'll have Hannah speak for about 45 minutes to an hour or so, and then we'll have time for Q&A, and I will be circulating with a microphone. Please use the microphone so that those online on the stream can hear your question as well. And I've learned so much from Hannah over the past decade, working with her as a mentor and a colleague, a co-conspirator. And I look forward to sharing that with you all here today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Hannah McGregor to the stage.
Thank you so much. Bear with me for a moment while I turn this thing on, because it's got the words on it that I'm going to say. And the first words say, thanks to Stacy Copeland. Great, thanks, Stacy. Thank you so much. It's an absolute delight to be here. I'm here pretty much entirely to hang out with Stacy, and this is a really lovely bonus treat. So thank you all so much for being here in this space, and thank you to the folks online. I'm assuming there's folks online. People like me more on the internet. Thank you to the University of Groningen for hosting me, and to everyone here for abiding by the fact that I can't figure out how to say the name of this city. I really appreciate it. I'm working on it. Today, I'm going to be speaking to you from my book, Clever Girl, Jurassic Park, and I'm going to turn this way because it makes the type bigger, and I'm old. Yeah. This book is part of the Pop Classics series published by Canadian independent press ECW. Each Pop Classics book makes an argument for the significance of a particular piece of pop culture. So if you enjoy my reading of Jurassic Park today, there's a whole lot more where this came from. I particularly recommend Andrea Warner's book about Dirty Dancing. There's like a microsecond delay between my voice and the sound. Is it making everybody else feel like a little drunk? Cool. Okay, we're all in this together. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. We're safe. We're fine. None of us are going nuts. So the argument that I'm gonna present to you today is that Steven Spielberg's 1993 blockbuster Jurassic Park is not just a family-friendly romp, but also offers us a unique vision of queer, feminist, and anti-colonial resistance rooted in the subversive monstrosity of the genetically engineered dinosaurs. But before we get into that, I'm gonna give you a summary of what happens in the movie in case you haven't seen it. Now, I was gonna ask who hasn't seen it, but I don't wanna shame you. So instead, I'm gonna ask, show of hands if you have seen Jurassic Park. Okay, good. So most of us, yes. Don't worry, I am gonna give you a sort of high-level plot summary. Spoilers, if you haven't seen it, I'm gonna tell you what happens in Jurassic Park. But I'm also gonna advocate for watching it because it really does slap. Okay, so here's a detail of Jurassic Park that you may have forgotten or perhaps never known. All of the dinosaurs are engineered to be female to prevent them from reproducing. A classic way to stop someone from reproducing. Is this detail a mere curiosity, or is it, bear with me here, the whole point of the movie? Jurassic Park is an adaptation of Michael Crichton's best-selling 1990 novel, a thriller cum cautionary tale responding to the emerging science of genetic engineering. The novel has a lot more granular detail about the engineering of the dinosaurs and the process's unpredictable results, but I have not read the novel and I'm not going to, so we're just gonna talk about the movie today. And the movie keeps things pretty straightforward. It boils everything down to an explanatory video and a few passing lines of dialogue as the outrageously Southern accented talking DNA strand explains. Jurassic Park's scientists created dinosaurs, verbatim, perfect imitation, by extracting dino DNA from mosquitoes preserved in amber, sequencing the genome, and then filling in the gaps with DNA from frogs. The frog DNA is the technical explanation for why the dinosaurs end up being able to reproduce. As Dr. Grant explains, I'll introduce you to him in a minute, some species of frog can change sex to reproduce in same-sex environments. In the novel, I understand there's much more to be said about like lysine and dichogamy and migration patterns, but the movie keeps things pretty straightforward. The dinosaurs were engineered to be entirely female in order to control their reproduction, and that attempt at control fails. As professional skeptic Dr. Ian Malcolm puts it, life finds a way. Now, here are a few more key plot points, again, just in case you've forgotten or have never seen this movie. Jurassic Park, the park in the movie, is the creation of tech billionaire, or I guess technically in the 90s, tech millionaire, because I don't think there were billionaires yet, but like same vibe. John Hammond, played by Richard Attenborough. We know only a small handful of things about John Hammond. He's Scottish for like the first 20 minutes of the movie, and then he just kind of like lets go of that. He dresses entirely in white. He hates lawyers and inspections, which is like a really bad sign. And the first attraction he ever created was a flea circus. Hammond is in the business of attractions. We know he has a game reserve in Kenya, which is an aside that firmly roots him in the history of colonialism. And Jurassic Park, this mic is my best friend. And Jurassic Park is set to be his biggest project yet. It's going to be his most exciting and his most successful attraction if he can keep those dang lawyers from shutting it down. We're going to talk a little bit more later about spectacle and attractions and the display of non-normative bodies, but for now, let's stick with the plot summary. See, the lawyers are mad because an employee got eaten by a dinosaur, and they're not convinced that more employees won't get eaten by dinosaurs, which is very bad for insurance and liability purposes. So the park's lawyer, Donald Gennaro, played in classic weaselly lawyer fashion by Martin Ferrero, tells Hammond that if some respected scientists will sign off on the park, then the other lawyers will be satisfied, which is honestly as much of a fantasy as bringing dinosaurs to life, because imagine a world where large corporations respect the word of someone with a PhD. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, Hammond and Gennaro gather up their scientists and ill-advisedly Hammond's grandchildren, and even more ill-advisedly, they send the majority of the park's employees away for the weekend so that everyone remaining can get nice and familiar with the park's untested attractions, including its miraculous computer-automated systems that for sure aren't going to shut down, leading the dinosaurs to run wild and eat the lawyer. Spoiler alert, you're gonna see this GIF a few more times tonight. Enter paleontologist Dr. Alan Grant in the charming red kerchief, played by Sam Neill, paleobotanist Dr. Ellie Sattler, played by Laura Dern, and chaotician, that's a mathematician specializing in chaos theory, Dr. Ian Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum. They meet on the helicopter traveling to the fictional Isla Nublar off the west coast of Costa Rica, and it quickly becomes clear to everyone involved that Jeff Goldblum is going to be the runaway charismatic star of the movie. Like, what even is this? Anyway, in a moment of delightfully on-the-nose foreshadowing, Dr. Grant finds that his seatbelt only consists of two buckles, the female ends of the seatbelt. Do you get it? They're female, like the dinosaurs. And like life, Grant finds a way. He knots the two female ends together. I need you to hold on to that detail because much of my argument about the dinosaurs' queerness hinges on this moment. What I'm saying is that this is a metaphor for gay sex. Okay, so Grant and Sattler are initially blown away by the viscerally powerful experience of seeing actual real live dinosaurs. They're our audience surrogates in those early encounters, so their wonder is our wonder. But that means as they start getting nervous, come on, about how well thought out the park actually is, their concern also becomes our concern. When Dr. Malcolm warns Hammond's lead scientist, Dr. Henry Wu, played by a criminally underused B.D. Wong, that the kind of control they're attempting can only ever be a fantasy in complex systems, Wu smirks back at him. You're saying this group of female animals will breed? No, Malcolm replies, even though that is kind of what he's saying. He just doesn't want anybody to laugh at him for not understanding how reproduction works. Grant isn't paying attention, though, because he's too busy focusing on the realization that the park is breeding velociraptors. This is very bad news because, as game warden Robert Muldoon, played by Bob Peck, pictured here dressed up like a sexy Steve Irwin, confirms, look how much thigh he's showing, it's just incredible. Like, same length of short, right? Like, that's feminism in action. Same shorts. Anyway, velociraptors love to murder. That's the problem. These guys love murdering, kids especially. Later that day, Grant and Sattler and Malcolm set out on the park's maiden voyage, accompanied by Gennaro, the lawyer, as well as Hammond's grandchildren, hacker Lex and dinosaur nerd Tim. The tour is supervised from a blue-lit command center by Hammond and Muldoon, alongside the park's chief engineer, Ray Arnold, played by Samuel L. Jackson. You might remember him from saying, "Hold on to your butts" a couple of times. It's important. And the park's programmer, Dennis Nedry, played by Wayne Knight. Pictured here with a picture of Robert Oppenheimer stuck to his computer monitor. Do you see it? You see it on the right there? Yeah, this is important because it clearly positions the film as a morality tale about technology gone too far and the hubris of those who think to play God with powers they barely understand. What follows, in keeping with this theme, is a cascade of system failures, symbolic of the chaos theory that Dr. Malcolm just so happens to be an expert in. His examples of chaos begin with a drop of water rolling unpredictably off Dr. Sattler's hand and eventually escalate to all the dinosaurs breaking free and doing a variety of unpredictable things, like reproducing despite being female, in your face, Dr. Wu, or eating the lawyer. When our surviving, I'm gonna leave this up for a while. When our surviving protagonists eventually reunite, they are finally ready to put aside their differences and agree that actually breeding dinosaurs was a pretty bad idea. End of the movie. Okay, so you're all caught up now on the key plot points, right? They make female dinosaurs, they think they won't breed, they eat the lawyer. Everybody decides that was a bad idea. So in Clever Girl, I spend a lot more time on chaos theory and complex ecologies and big tech morality tales, but today I want to focus in on that detail that I opened with, our all-female dinosaurs as examples of female monstrosity. At its core, this movie is about humans thinking we can control nature and being proven wrong. Are you enjoying watching this on repeat? Good, great. It makes me very happy. I love her. Look at her go. Yeah, an icon. The form that nature takes is female animals who subvert control in every conceivable way by bursting out of their enclosures, forming hunting packs, and of course, breeding. The breeding is thematically important, for sure. It is life finding a way. It is control failing, and more subtextually, it is the patriarchal fantasy of women as perfectly malleable and perfectly controllable falling apart. The capacity for all female societies to reproduce is a recurring motif in feminist utopias. In Charlotte Perkin Gilman's 1915 novel Herland, for example, women reproduce through parthenogenesis, eliminating the need for men entirely. Parthenogenesis is not what's happening in Jurassic Park. The process Dr. Grant describes, called dichogamy, is common in flowers, fish, snails, and other intersex organisms, allowing them to cross-fertilize. Scientifically, this means that the dinosaurs are all intersex, but the film insists on their femaleness. The ability to reproduce is something that has been denied them. That's the language Dr. Wu uses, deny. And like their freedom and their ability to hunt, it is something they violently reclaim. Remember that moment when Grant ties the two female ends of his seatbelt together? Yeah, like I really emphasized it? Good. He doesn't find some clever way to turn one of the buckles into a tongue, just like half the dinosaurs don't suddenly become male. No, Grant circumvents the whole tongue in buckle logic by making a knot, a symbolic rejection of a binary and heteronormative logic in which only the male and female, the buccal and the tongue, can fit together. And that not, like the engineered dinosaurs of Jurassic Park, is decidedly queer. Which brings us to part 2. Velociraptors are sexy. My favorite entry in the Toast's now discontinued If X Were Your Y essay series is Michelle Vider's If the Velociraptor from Jurassic Park Were Your Girlfriend. This is my textual proof that I'm not the only person who thinks this movie is gay. In it, Vider unfurls the queer erotic undertones of the all-female dinosaurs, specifically the largest and most vicious of the 3 velociraptors. She writes, "Her head rests above yours, her legs behind yours, her tail curled around both of you, her wrist and those claws resting against your stomach." Okay, maybe you aren't convinced that a potential dismemberment is erotic, but the subtext is there throughout the movie, from Grant slowly running a velociraptor claw across a horrified child's belly to Muldoon murmuring, "Clever girl," right before he's oh so cleverly eaten. The velociraptors hold a special place in the heart of the movie, and that's because they held a special place in the origins of the story. See, Crichton was part inspired by reading the work of paleontologist John Ostrom, that's him in the corner, whose discovery of the fossilized remains of the Deinonychus in the late 1960s spurred what has been referred to as the dinosaur renaissance. Ostrom is the one who argued that dinosaurs had evolved into birds, a stance attributed to Dr. Grant in the movie. And Deinonychus's sleek bird-like body and raptor claws likely had something to do with that. A new generation of paleontologists like Ostrom and Robert Backer, who dinosaur nerd Tim name-checks in the movie as having written a book longer than Dr. Grant's, and who we'll get to meet in his famous cowboy hat a little bit later. These guys were cool. They were like the bad boys of paleontology. And they transformed the study of dinosaurs and the popular understanding of them by demonstrating that dinosaurs hadn't been cold-blooded, lumbering evolutionary failures, but warm-blooded, intelligent, and adaptable. Once we came to understand, are my fingers too cold? Is that why it's not working? It's really hard to say. Once we came to understand that dinosaurs could be agile predators, intelligent pack hunters with complex social dynamics, then all of a sudden we wanted to talk about them again. Perhaps it is man's eternal struggle to see an incredibly deadly animal and think, I want to know everything about that so that I can fight it. Fascination with the deadliness and intelligence of velociraptors dominates the entire franchise. By Jurassic Park 3, the raptors are having full conversations with each other in clicks and warbles, tracking humans through the jungle to retrieve their stolen eggs, and being described by Grant as having human levels of intelligence. By Jurassic World, they've got names and personalities and an inexplicable fondness for Chris Pratt. But in the original, their intelligence is pure malevolence. The other dinosaurs, even the enormous and deadly T-Rex, are animals. If you understand them well enough, you can survive them, if not outright control them. Sure, T-Rex is huge and loud and will totally eat you, but unlike the raptors, she isn't associated with monstrosity or a malevolent feminine hunger. While the velociraptors are repeatedly referred to as female, the T-Rex is actually mostly called he, and framed in terms of majesty and instinct rather than cruelty or malice. But the velociraptors are not comprehensible, controllable, or survivable. Their most insidious feature is their capacity to learn, beginning with testing the electric fences on their enclosure and escalating to their mastery of doorknobs. I'm really convinced that given enough time, they'd figure out how to fire a gun. T-Rex hunts because she's hungry. The velociraptors hunt because they want you specifically to die. There's no way they're still hungry after eating Muldoon and Arnold, and yet they stalk the film's protagonists unrelentingly right up until our beautiful T-Rex intervenes. You see there's a velociraptor sort of on her. It's their fight. They're having a fight. Guys, I love this movie. They're smart, they're determined, they love to murder, and they're female. Now, to understand the significance of this representation of velociraptors, we have to look at the history of monstrous women in film. The concept of the monstrous feminine comes from the feminist film scholar Barbara Creed's book, appropriately titled The Monstrous Feminine, which demonstrates how cinematic visions of monstrosity so frequently draw on female reproductive functions, from the perverse mothering of vampires, siring other vampires, to the vagina dentata-esque design of the aliens in Alien. It's so wet, right? I'm going to talk more about why that's important. The monstrous feminine is not merely a reversal of a male monsters, a gender-swapped Frankenstein, or like a ghost that happens to be a girl. No, the monstrous feminine is monstrous because of and through its femininity, rooted in Western culture's deep and pervasive horror of bodies that can menstruate, get pregnant, and give birth. Bodies that are penetrable, that leak various fluids, bodies that are permeable and messy. I know what that horror feels like, both from other people, a man recoiling in instinctive disgust when I mention I'm menstruating, say, and toward myself as I wash blood out of my clothes in a restaurant bathroom. That horror is writ large on movie screens throughout the history of cinema. Chances are, if you see a gaping maw full of sharp teeth and a wet, dark interior, that maw is telling you something about the Western horror of vaginas and their dark secrets. While I was writing this book, I went to a museum exhibit about the T-Rex, which was the first time I really noticed that this bitch always has her mouth open. In a darkened room in the TELUS World of Science in Vancouver, I stood next to a T-Rex fossil reproduction, her body thrust forward over powerful hind legs, head lunging forward, head lunging toward the ground as though she had just spotted prey. "You are that prey" was the spine-chilling subtext. Open mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, lights angled just so to cast a perfect shadow of those teeth onto the ground below. Those insistently displayed teeth that endure despite recent and unsettling studies suggesting that tyrannosaurs probably had lips. Yeah, I saw you miming lips. You know about the lips. It's creepy. The insistently displayed teeth insist that T-Rex's function is first and foremost to devour. She is, as one exhibit panel put it, built to kill. In Women and Other Monsters, Jess Zimmerman lists the many ways in which women can become monstrous. By being too sexy or not sexy enough, too hungry or ambitious, too angry, too large. She also advocates not only for us to understand how monstrosity has been constructed, but to actively embrace it, to become monstrous. There's a term for the subversive embracing of historically maligned characteristics. It's called radical negativity, and it's an approach to culture practiced by a lot of minoritized communities, particularly queer, trans, racialized, and disabled folks. When we cannot find ourselves reflected in the heroes and protagonists of stories, we instead learn to see ourselves in the villains, especially in properties where villains tend to be queer-coded. Look no further than Ursula, the sea witch, from Disney's animated classic, The Little Mermaid, a high femme octopus witch modeled on the drag queen Divine, the most memorable star of John Waters' camp films. Ursula has become a cherished icon for fat women and queer folks. See, for example, Titus Burgess's iconic cover of Ursula's signature song, Poor Unfortunate Souls. Not despite, but because of her monstrosity. It's only as an adult that I've come to realize how Jurassic Park's monstrous dinosaur women, alongside figures like Ursula and the harpy in The Last Unicorn, which I'm actually going to talk about a little bit more in a moment, introduced me to visions of monstrous femininity that shaped my own queerness and feminism. Look at that little baby Hannah. Fat, closeted, and deeply uncomfortable in my own skin, I spent my youth trying to make myself smaller while admiring these on-screen versions of women who were unabashedly enormous and powerful, and whose monstrosity freed them from the regime of heterosexual desirability. The dinosaurs were an early lesson in the fact that I, too, could be enormous, loud, and deadly if I wanted to. Of course, as a fat kid, I was absolutely not going to tell my friends or classmates that I identified with dinosaurs. They already made enough jokes about me sitting on them or eating them. But these monstrous women unlocked a longing in me. Before I fell in love with Jurassic Park, my favorite movie was the eerie 70s animated classic, The Last Unicorn, adapted from the novel by Peter S. Beagle. Quick show of hands, who's seen this movie? Okay, that's your homework. It's so weird. Strong recommend. This story of an evil king capturing all the world's unicorns is a parable about capitalist greed and environmental extraction, as well as a compelling metaphor for menstruation. Now that I'm a woman, everything has changed, sings the unicorn before she goes to confront the Red Bull. But despite her metaphorical function as a symbol of purity and its loss, the unicorn is also a kind of monster, a throwback to a world of magic that humans no longer believe in. In the midst of her travels, the unicorn is captured by Mommy Fortuna, a witch who uses her power of illusion to disguise mundane animals as magical creatures and display them in a dingy traveling carnival, because that's what you do with monstrous bodies. You cage them and display them. More on that in a moment, though. Easily seen through Mommy Fortuna's cheap magic, the unicorn identifies the one other creature that is real: the terrible, ancient, and immortal harpy Selena. Mommy Fortuna knows that Selena will kill her one day, but her inevitable death is worth it because, however briefly, she has put the unspeakable wildness of the whole ancient earth in a cage. She will die, but Selena will not. And, quote, she will remember forever that I caught her and I held her prisoner, so there's my immortality, end quote. The harpy's monstrosity is more clearly on display than the unicorn's. She is horrible, huge, and beaked, and many-breasted. But she and the unicorn are sisters in immortality, fossils of a strange world. They are, both of them, dinosaurs. As a child, I was awkward in my body, more harpy than unicorn. I was tall and big for my age, with bad hand-eye coordination and a wincing fear of pain that my mother eventually routed out of me by making me take horseback riding lessons. Because I was big and chubby, children and adults alike attributed my lack of physical grace to a wrongness in my body. I was always too much, too big, too loud, too strong. I had a clumsy, puppy-like desire to play with my friends and a tendency to accidentally hurt them. Other girls were so small, so dainty, so quick to cry. The only time I can recall my size not being a problem was in 5th grade when the kids in my class were into playing horse and rider. I made a good horse. My too big body was also read as a kind of gender failure. I couldn't dress cutely, doomed to frumpy adult clothes by age 12. I had breasts early, but the girls in my 3rd grade class made sure I knew it was only because I was fat. To make matters worse, I was a very girly girl. I liked tutus and Barbies and unicorns and stationery. I really wanted to be like a pretty princess and was aware that I was not and probably never would be. And so, around the edges of my love for all things pink and frilly, a shadow began to grow. And that shadow was a fascination with the monstrous. The monsters that drew me had 3 things in common. They were big, they were angry, and they were women. Ursula, Celino, and of course my beloved dinosaurs, the T-Rex especially, so big, so hungry, so frustrated by her enclosure. My body felt like a cage, but I also had a nascent understanding, years from articulation, that I could be free if the circumstances were different, that I was only a monster because the people around me kept telling me I was. I longed for permission to be enormous and devastating, not yet realizing that our own enormity is something we must claim, often violently. Monsters, after all, do not ask permission. Which brings us to part 4, the monstrous gaze. Gaze, like gaze? It's a visual pun. It's fun. If we want to understand the enormous success of Jurassic Park as a blockbuster, we need to answer a deceptively simple question. Why do we love looking at dinosaurs? Jurassic Park is a film about looking, but as feminist film scholar Laura Mulvey has argued, so are most films. Within the visual language of cinema, the camera operates like an eye through which we, as viewers, might enjoy our scopophilia, literally the pleasure of looking, without being ourselves subject to the gaze. And, as Mulvey explains, that cinematic gaze has traditionally been a deeply gendered one, enacting a masculine pleasure in looking at objectified women. We can slot Jurassic Park into this same tradition. It's a film about the pleasure of looking at dinosaurs, and those dinosaurs are, again, not coincidentally, all female, and all being actively objectified as professional showman John Hammond and his team of scientists attempt to turn them into spectacles. Jurassic Park was a technological and cinematic breakthrough, winning the 1994 Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. But it also marked the apex of a long history of people vying to secure the rights to display dinosaur remains. Fossil hunter Barnum Brown, who discovered the first T-Rex remains in the early 20th century, was funded by the American Museum of Natural History. He was looking for fossils specifically to put them on display. Scholar Lisa DeTora, writing about the Chicago Field Museum's acquisition of the famed T-Rex fossil nicknamed Sue, argues that this purchase was really about, quote, ensuring that she would be available to the public gaze in perpetuity, end quote. That desire to possess and display the remains of dinosaurs is part of a longer history of crowd-pleasing spectacle, dating back to the earliest forms of American popular culture. Do you hate the word history? What's up, Mike? Wow, it's erasing history. Okay, a history ironically evoked by Barnum Brown's name. His parents named him after famed circus showman P.T. Barnum. Perhaps you're familiar with P.T. Barnum from the 2017 musical The Greatest Showman, a shockingly bad film that recasts him as a champion of the underdog, when in reality he perpetuated a series of hoaxes grounded in exploiting non-normative bodies. Barnum got his start by touring and displaying an enslaved Black woman. Her name was Joyce Heth, and he claimed that she was 161 years old and had been mammy to George Washington himself. When his audience grew bored with her, Barnum planted a rumor that Heth was in fact a convincing automaton, made up of whalebone, India rubber, and numberless springs ingeniously put together. She was, to clarify, a real human woman. Joyce Heth reminds us that the origin of American popular culture and its fascination with staring at technological marvels is entangled with the display of gendered and racialized bodies. As scholar Louis Chudsoke has argued in his article, The Uncanny History of Minstrels and Machines, Barnum's claim that Heth was an automaton is entangled in the, quote, history of freakery, ethnographic display, and the complex birth of both the museum and the Western carnival circus complex, end quote. As museums and circuses, parallel institutions of popular spectacle, sought out ever more exciting exhibits, they also helped to demarcate the boundary between the human and the not quite human, those who were counted as subjects and those who could be displayed as objects of curiosity. Joyce Heth was already dehumanized by being toured as a curiosity, and Barnum's later claim that she was an automaton furthered that dehumanization, pushing her deeper into the category of thing rather than person. Both P.T. Barnum's circus and Barnum Brown's fossil hunting were in service of a public hungry for something exciting to look at, and who were fascinated by new technologies that might be able to trick them into mistaking fantasy for reality. Dinosaurs, at once real and surreal, natural and constructed by the paleontologists whose job it was to piece their skeletons back together, scratched that voyeuristic itch, and that's the same itch that John Hammond is targeting. Hammond is a kind of modern-day P.T. Barnum, calling for us to step right up, tricking us with artifice while promising to show us something real, something we can see and touch. Hammond calls that an aim not devoid of merit, and we're invited to sit in the question of that merit. Yes, people are dying, but first they did get to look at dinosaurs. By evoking Barnum and the history of the circus, it did it on history again. What is happening? Guys, this is one of these dead guys, right? You gotta figure out which one it is. By evoking Barnum and the history of the circus, yes, the film also evokes the violence of that history and the horrifying complicity that comes from gazing upon something or someone that you are being told is yours to look at, an ownership of voyeurism. Okay, bear with me for a moment because we do need to talk about the relationship between knowledge and power. At the heart of white supremacy is the belief that white people are not only the natural leaders of civilization, but also that we are uniquely qualified to divvy the rest of the world up into categories and hierarchies, and then to produce knowledge about them. Knowledge that naturalizes those invented categories. The invention of race as part of the project of colonialism, for example, allowed 19th century scientists to then develop pseudoscientific techniques like phrenology, the study of human skull shape as an indicator of intelligence and moral character, that produced knowledge about racial identity. These new scientific truths were in turn legitimized by institutions like universities and medical schools, further dividing the world into those who produced knowledge and those who knowledge was produced about. Spectacles, we must conclude, are always entangled in questions of power, the power of who is looking and of how they name what they're looking at. At the heart of the success of Jurassic Park was how beautifully it produced the sense of the dinosaurs as being real and really there. Spielberg used both cutting-edge computer-generated visuals from Industrial Light and Magic, as well as life-sized animatronics. When the dinosaurs get close, when our protagonists touch them, they feel real because they are, because they're actually there, beautifully wrought machines, not of whalebone and India rubber, but certainly numerous parts ingeniously put together. As John Hammond welcomes his visitors to Jurassic Park, he welcomes us as well. When Doctors Grant and Sadler first look at the dinosaurs, we look too, and alongside them we are swept up in the sheer joy of looking. John Williams' majestic score washes over us, underlining that what we are seeing is larger than life, that it is sublime. But we are also swept into these parallel histories of circuses displaying non-normative bodies for entertainment and films displaying female bodies for the male gaze. What particularly thrills Grant and Sattler, though, is the experience of looking at a real dinosaur rather than a representation of one. As it's time for some water. What did I do? Oh, it's fine. Everybody calm down, it's fine. As they look, they breathlessly exchange their new scientific certainties, that brachiosaurs are warm-blooded and they moved in herds, and invite us to share in the joy of unmediated contact, despite the fact that our contact is, in fact, extremely mediated, not only through the film itself, but through the many representations through which we encounter dinosaurs in the film. Whether it's goofy didactic videos or reflections in mirrors, Jurassic Park encourages us to look, but never lets us stop thinking about our own looking and about the technologies that have shaped it. Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear, reads the warning on the Jeep mirror as our heroes narrowly escape a lunging T-Rex. The dinosaurs might appear to be right there on a screen so close we could touch it, but the dinosaurs themselves are still out of reach. In their kitchen showdown, Hammond's grandchildren Lex and Tim escape the raptors by outsmarting them with reflections. The raptors don't know what a mirror is yet. In part, we, the audience, are safe because, like our protagonists in those moments, we're never actually looking right at the dinosaurs. We're always seeing them through layers of filmmaking. A movie-made looking glass that reminds us again and again that these are not real dinosaurs, but representations that come from human minds. And because they come from human minds, they have been distorted and misidentified by what we expect them to look like, by the desires we bring into our experience of looking. As any true dinosaur nerd will tell you, Jurassic Park's clever girls are not even velociraptors. They're Deinonychus, from the Greek for terrible claw, and were deliberately misnamed by Michael Crichton in the original novel because velociraptor is more fun to say and because most Americans don't have a working knowledge of Greek. Remember I promised you'd see the cowboy hat? So that's a inexplicably topless John Ostrom on the left, and that's Robert Backer in his famous hat. The dinosaur renaissance was already well underway when Jurassic Park was released. The discovery of new fossils in the 1960s and 70s had led paleontologists to theorize dinosaurs as intelligent, warm-blooded, and active, rather than cold-blooded behemoths inevitably wiped out by their own sluggishness. And the personas of the new generation of paleontologists as the bad boys of the fossil world certainly helped. Their discoveries reinvigorated public interest in dinosaurs, and Jurassic Park threw about $914 million of fuel on that fire. That's the worldwide gross of the opening run, shaping a generation's understanding of dinosaurs. Don't believe me? Just Google, was T-Rex's vision motion-based? It absolutely was not. They probably had excellent vision, considering the size of their orbital cavities. Those are the eye holes in the sky, in the skull for the uninitiated. And besides, they were probably hunted using mainly smell, because they had those like huge nasal cavities. That made-up fact, introduced by Dr. Grant as he saves Lex and Tim from the movie's T-Rex, was based on the screenwriter David Cope misunderstanding a detail from Crichton's novel. The T-Rex had flawed vision because of the way she'd been genetically engineered. The franchise doubled down on this error of adaptation, obsessed with the cinematic possibilities of having to lie very, very still while a T-Rex snuffles over your body like a horse looking for a sugar cube. Like renaming Deinonychus Velociraptor, depicting dinosaurs as scaled and creating their distinctive roars, making the T-Rex's vision motion-based was a creative liberty. That so many of these liberties continue to shape popular understandings of dinosaurs is a reminder of the outsized cultural impact this film has. These liberties also underline the refractory quality of Jurassic Park. The film not only encourages us to gaze at dinosaurs, but alters our very perceptions of what we're gazing at, mirroring how the scientists in Hammond's labs alter the dinosaurs they're cloning to make them more controllable. But of course, like many monstrous women that have come before them, the dinosaurs prove to be harder to control than Hammond's scientists imagined. Now that we've got a better sense of the history of the violent capture and display of non-normative bodies, let's get back to the cinematic allure of the monstrous feminine. I've referred to the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park as monsters, or at least as monstrous, a few times now, but their monstrosity, the way they can be read as monstrous women, as the boogeymen of a horror story, lives alongside their animality. When Lex, traumatized by almost being eaten, shies away from a brachiosaurus screaming, "Don't let the monsters come over here," Grant corrects her. "They're not monsters, Lex. They're just animals." That just speaks volumes. If they're animals, they can be tamed, understood, managed. Animals are natural and thus comprehensible. Monsters are unnatural, but not in the way we define civilization as unnatural, as moving away from the blood and fury of nature into something safer and more contained. The monstrous has also moved away from the natural, but in the opposite direction, becoming not more civilized, but more uncontrollable and more existentially threatening. Animals can be tamed, monsters must be destroyed. The question of nature versus monstrosity is mostly subtext rather than text in Jurassic Park. The dinosaurs are framed narratively as wild animals who are out of place in time, confused and hungry, and just acting the way animals will. The notable exception is the velociraptors, who are associated with a malignant, quasi-human level of intelligence, tipping into the monstrous because of that intelligence. They aren't just reacting to stimuli, they're learning, and they use what they learn to try to eat children. But dig a little deeper, and we can see that all of the dinosaurs are monstrous in the sense that they are unnatural, genetically altered for the purposes of the park, not only to be incapable of breeding and to die without medical interventions, but also to grow faster. And those are only the intentional consequences of their genetic hybridity before we add on T-Rex's strange vision or the dinosaur's ability to change sex. The malleability of the dinosaurs, their chaotic ability to escape the grasp of masculine science and Western rationality, is the crux of their monstrosity. This is, after all, what female monstrosity does. It makes a mockery of attempts to control or even fully understand it. like the unfilmable witch in the Blair Witch Project, or the sexy but unkillable alien hybrid in Species, or basically every movie in the Alien franchise. It's tempting to then say that Jurassic Park is a movie horrified with the monstrous feminine, seeking to tame and control women's unruly bodies. The problem with that reading is that everyone fucking loves these dinosaurs. Even the raptors are praised for what they are. Clever girl, Muldoon says, right before he is presumably disemboweled by them. Of the many utopian possibilities offered by this film, a society of all women, a violent takedown of techno-capitalism and extractive tourism, perhaps the one that holds my imagination tightest is the idea that monstrous women may be praised not despite, but precisely for our monstrosity. That someone might be so captivated by the majesty of you disemboweling your prey that they just can't look away. That they might look you in the eye as you slide a claw into their gut and say, "Good job." This is also the queerest thing about the movie for me, Laura Dern aside. Because it's in queer community that I first found this thrilling possibility made real. My loudness, my fatness, my ferocity, all the things that made me too much were suddenly not only accepted, but celebrated. Rather than subtly suggesting diets or exercise regimes or asking me to state my opinions less forcefully because I'm being intimidating, my friends now give me pins that say fat bitch on them. At my 39th birthday party, one guest lovingly described me as having the energy of that one friend who wants you to poison your husband. Or as another friend put it, referring to the iconic murder ballad by the Chicks, I'm serving Goodbye Earl. I could be that lead velociraptor, the big one, eating park employees and testing electrical fences, and someone would look at me and say, I am terrified of you, and you are magnificent. Never mind that if a man ever condescendingly called me a clever girl, I might actually be moved to disembowelment. Arguably, the scariest thing the dinosaurs do, though, isn't end life, but create it. Despite being a movie entirely devoid of human mothers, Jurassic Park is extremely concerned with dinosaur procreation. The dinosaurs might well be put in the category of giant sci-fi women that Emily Yoshida writes about in Do Androids Dream of Colossal Women? Yoshida is writing about Blade Runner 2049 and links the fixation on giant women to the film's obsession with motherhood and biological reproduction. But we might make a similar extrapolation about Jurassic Park. The dinosaurs are, quite literally, giant, monstrous mothers, rendered all the more monstrous and uncontrollable through the fact of their motherhood. But rather than being erotically charged, big, sexy mommies that you might freudishly climb back inside of, that's Yoshida's argument. That's not just me. That's what she says about the giant women. The dinosaurs are going to drag you back into the womb, kicking and screaming via the gnashing orifices of their many-toothed mouths. You know what gif I'm about to play you? Yeah. That image is, well, it's not erotic, let me put it that way, but it's also queerly erotic, decentering heteronormative understandings of sexuality as penetrative and reproductive in favor of erotics as the evocation and celebration of all that is wild and joyful and powerful within us. That's the understanding at the root of Vider's piece on dating the velociraptor. The wildness and untamed monstrosity of the velociraptor calls to your wildness and monstrosity. You do not tame her with your love. Instead, you go with her into the wild, just as the protagonists in Jurassic Park must embrace wildness to survive. An image of Laura Dern, sweaty and bloodstained, sprinting through the jungle comes to mind. There's no implication here that you're fucking the raptor. What's erotic is the proximity to her danger, the awareness that she could kill you at any moment and does not for now. It's an erotics of the sublime, the visceral thrill of realizing how small and helpless and insignificant you are, and it hovers just under the surface of so many of the human interactions with dinosaurs that we see throughout Jurassic Park. Dr. Sattler weeping as she touches a sick triceratops, Lex hesitantly reaching out to commune with a brachiosaurus before getting coated head to toe in dinosaur snot. I'm actually not going to close read that part. You can do that on your own time. Even the way Dr. Grant holds his breath as the T-Rex snuffles ever closer to him, literally undressing him with her heavy breath, suggests a frisson of something thrilling within the terror of this proximity. To be close to a dinosaur is to be close to something so viscerally other that it brings your own animality to the surface. As I wrote this book and worked my way through the gendered politics of the dinosaurs, I struggled with how to articulate their relationship to the idea of woman. But that's only appropriate because I've been grappling with my own relationship to the idea of woman as well. Years after I finally came out, first to myself and then gradually to my community as queer, I experienced a second coming out as asexual. Recognizing and naming my own asexuality has been a fraught, multi-year experience. I first heard the term in 2014 or 2015, the gentle offering of a queer friend to whom I had just tearfully confessed that I feared I was broken because I couldn't make myself want anyone. My fatness and queerness had given me a fraught relationship to desire, one that for years had stood in the way of conversations about the possible substance of that desire. I was too busy worrying about being wanted to ask myself what I might want for myself. As I began to dig into that question, I couldn't believe that the answer might be no one. Deeper than the fear of an unfamiliar sexual orientation, though, was the conviction that my asexuality was a one-way trip to profound loneliness. I had spent much of my 20s watching friends enter relationships and immediately stop having time for their friendships. This was something they framed to me as inevitable, as part of the process of growing up. Now I was picturing a future in which everyone else gradually paired off and I was left behind, alone. In the years since, this fear has been allayed, not because I was wrong, but because I have deliberately fostered queer community in which friendship is not placed hierarchically below romantic relationships, in which I am valued and celebrated as a queer auntie and beloved friend. This is my demonstration. This is a drawing session that I had with some kiddos in my life because they were talking about diamond swords, and I thought they said dinosaurs, so we decided to draw some dinosaurs with diamond swords. I'm a fun auntie. Part of my conviction that I am both queer and asexual lies in the fact that queer community is the place where my asexuality is seen and celebrated, whereas within the discourses of reproductive heterosexuality, I am a failure. I suppose my asexuality is another kind of monstrosity that I've found celebrated in queer community, like my fatness, my loudness, the too muchness of my ferocity and love. And lately, when I look at my fat queer body in a mirror, I've begun to ask, am I a woman? Does the category or concept of woman mean anything to me? Is the gender failure of my fat body perhaps its own kind of exciting queer possibility? In lieu of thinking of myself as a woman, I've been increasingly thinking of myself as a femme. Femme is a queer term that embraces and reclaims many of the stigmatized qualities of femininity, including community care and emotional labor, without linking it to essentialized characteristics of womanhood or the binary logics of heterosexuality. And while work on femme politics and ethics often focuses on questions of care, there is also space in femme community for monsters. Look no further than writer and disability justice activist Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasinha's Femme Shark Manifesto, i.e. my favorite manifesto of all time. You should have a favorite manifesto. It's a great personality trait. Femme sharks embody not the meekness and delicacy of femininity as defined in a patriarchal framework, but rather a femininity that is ravenous, loud, and unruly. Femmes are revolutionaries dedicated to taking the system the hell down so we can be free. Femme sharks think eating a big-ass meal is sexy. They have big mouths and they know how to use them. They are tough and hungry and fierce. This is the female monstrosity I find in Jurassic Park. The dinosaurs are monstrous women and they are femme sharks. They are ravenous, they are loud, they are committed to taking down the system of the park so that they can be free. The fact that we don't know their biological sex, that they defy the attempt of the scientists to control their sex as a means of controlling them, only underlines their queerness, evoking the history and current day battle of trans and intersex people fighting against these same forms of control by a white supremacist and patriarchal medical system that strives to violently reinforce a culturally constructed sex-gender binary. I don't want to undermine the gender play of these intersex dinosaurs by insisting that they're all women, even as their proximity to womanness is central to their monstrosity. Fat, femme, queer, hungry, monstrous, full of rage, and determined to be free. No wonder I've gravitated to these creatures as feminist role models. They offer a fantasy of freedom that sparked a young girl's imagination and since then has grown into a full-on obsession with what is possible when we embrace, without fear or shame, our own sublime monstrosity. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah.
I almost ended with the GIF again, and then I was like, nah.
This one's good too. I like this one.
Yeah.
So now we have a bit of time for questions from the audience. I will roam around with a microphone. You can put up a hand if you have questions for Hannah or question talking points to kick us off.
I know it's hard because I've been talking for such a long time.
If not, I can, oh, yeah, perfect. This is always I'm like, is there one? And then we have the brave first question.
Hi, lovely lecture, by the way, really great. I don't have a fully formed question yet, but I was wondering if you could maybe go on a little bit more about the words that he uses, Muldoon. Clever girl, like at some point you say it's praise, it's not, altogether just an animal, but it's also patronizing, and you did say that as well.
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's part of what makes that scene so iconic, right? Is that in that moment, so Muldoon is a big game hunter, and he has been brought from Hammond's Kenyan Reserve, and he specifies that he's hunted everything, like this is his claim to sort of masculinity, is that he dominates the natural world. But, part of his characteristic is an understanding of what makes an animal dangerous. So he's the one who says early on that he thinks all the velociraptors should be put down, that they're too dangerous, they shouldn't be around. But hinging, like his respect for them, right, is based on a sort of hierarchy of respect in which whoever can kill you is the best, right? So like he establishes his dominance through killing, right? Through the fact that he has successfully overpowered and outthought every animal. And the danger of the velociraptors is that even the man who is the best at killing cannot kill them. And so I kind of read that moment, right, as a simultaneous attempt to reassert control, right? Because his control is in part hinged on like, I understand these animals the best. And there's an irony in that final moment of attempting to reassert control, because you can sort of smugly be like, called it. I knew these guys are incredibly good at killing people, right? Like it's sort of this cocky moment right before he is eaten. And who gets the last laugh, right? But there's this admiration all the way through, the sense that like, everybody thinks the velociraptors are so cool. They're like, we should not have them around. It is a terrible idea. We are all gonna die. But they're so cool, and nobody can look away when they eat that cow that's lowered into the enclosure, right? There's this like deep fascination, and it's that love. It's the way that the terror is always accompanied by love that I think is so interesting.
Other questions?
Well, I just started my research master thesis, and I'm doing it on asexuality and aromanticism, specifically in how film constructs images. And I wonder, how would you reconcile the possibility of reproduction and the fact that the dinosaurs do in fact do it with an asexual gaze?
Yeah. I mean, in a couple of ways, one of the things that is interesting about particularly how this movie is sort of grappling with the dinosaurs' gender liminality and their subversive relationship to reproduction is that we never see any of it on the screen. So later movies in the franchise become obsessed with the dinosaurs as parents. It becomes this sort of, what I read fundamentally as a sort of conservative drive in the subsequent movies to sort of domesticate the dinosaurs by placing them in traditional parental roles. Like in the second movie, there's like a boy T-Rex and a girl T-Rex who are like taking care of their babies. And it's like, you might as well have put big fake eyelashes on the girl T-Rex. Like they're really trying to drive home. And there's this very strong association of like, this is the characteristic that makes them animals we must consider intelligent and worthy of respect, is that they care about their children, that becomes the sort of logic that renders them comprehensible. But in the first movie, the fact of their reproduction is signaled to us exclusively through the fact that Dr. Grant finds some eggs. And there's there's some like dinosaur eggs, and he smells them. So maybe you haven't watched this movie. Nobody's watched this movie as many times as I have, but he finds the egg and is like, cool, an egg, and then smells it. It's so weird. There's like little dinosaur footsteps, and it's like, okay, something's happened here, right? And the way he describes it, he says, Dr. Malcolm is right, life found a way. But it's left in this really liminal space, right? That something happened that led to reproduction, but the specific dynamics of it are nobody's business. And that, to me, feels both more subversive and more encompassing of a queer relationship to family. That like, it's actually nobody's business how these babies came about. What matters here is that there's some babies now. And that tells us that our attempt to control has failed. Why does he smell the inside of the egg, you guys? He's a paleontologist. He works with fossils. Smell is not one of the senses he uses to do his science. It's so weird.
Thank you so much for an amazing talk. I was wondering if you could maybe expand a bit more on how, like what you just started basically, on how the portrayal of the dinosaurs and especially the gendered aspects changes throughout the franchise. Because like in the first one, it's like very specific. And then, like, especially in the second trilogy, you have like a lot of stuff, especially with the humans, that is turned on its head.
I hate the
Love to
second
hear more
trilogy
about
so
that.
much. Yeah, absolutely. When I first wrote, so the conclusion of this of Clever Girl is called Backwards and in Beige Heels, which is my read of the second trilogy that like literally reverses the gender politics of the original movie. There is a kind of slippage into a more conventional sort of blockbuster dynamic in the second and third movies of the original trilogy, right? Particularly the second one really tries to take Dr. Ian Malcolm and turn him into a more conventional like action star, and that really doesn't work because Jeff Goldblum is like way too campy to like embody that kind of masculinity. And then the third one, they bring Alan Grant back, right? And it's sort of back to a scientist-y focus. But the Jurassic World trilogy takes the sort of liminal danger of the dinosaurs and renders it fully managed through the figure of Chris Pratt, who probably has a character name, but I don't care. Owen. Oh, it's Owen. Fuck, it's like in there. Who is like essentially like a dog whisperer, right? Like he's figured out, he's at one point, he's introducing some young boys to his velociraptors, and he says, this is Blue, Blue is the beta, and the boy says, who's the alpha? And he says, you're looking at him. And it's so gross. And what it's doing is like fundamentally reversing, right? What the first trilogy is doing. It's saying that natural dinosaurs, because they function within a natural hierarchy, can be dominated by virtue of that hierarchy. A human just needs to insert themselves into it. And so the villains, the like monsters in the Jurassic World trilogy become these intentionally engineered monstrous hybrids that are not dinosaurs that would have existed in nature. They're sort of deliberately created monsters. And so because they are deliberately created monsters, they can be triumphantly killed, which is what happens to them for the most part, right? And frequently they are triumphantly killed by T-Rexes or velociraptors or both, because they come to stand in for sort of naturalness, and they destroy these monstrous women who subvert the natural order. But the natural order, of course, is like properly headed up by a virile straight man with a gun. And that's the proper hierarchy. And really, really important to me is the fact that the whole alpha-beta pack dynamic is itself based famously on a misunderstanding of wolf pack dynamics. So the next time if anybody ever sort of mentions wolf packs to you, please ruin their day by telling them that the original studies of wolf dynamics were done in captivity, and what was being observed in wolf packs of the sort of alpha and beta and hierarchical relationship, in fact, had nothing to do with actual wolf relationships. It was about how animals respond to the trauma of captivity. Because in the wild, wolves are not hierarchical, they're family units. And wolf behaviorists have basically spent decades being like, could everybody please stop talking about alpha wolves? It's very embarrassing. Like, we really messed up, and we would like you to all stop talking about it because it's so awkward that we got it so wrong. Because they got it so wrong, because that's not, like, animals don't have these fantasy hierarchies, right? Those are human constructs. Animals live in complex family relations in the wild. It's just what they do. So yeah, I don't like them. And I was hoping that the Jonathan Bailey slutty little glasses one would be good, but it's actually also very silly. So just this one. Just watch this one over and over again.
Then on that note, a big thank you to Hannah, of course, for sharing with us today and joining us here at the university. And a thank you to all of you for coming out today to Studium General. We do hope to see you next week. Is the second talk in the Look at Her series.
Look at her. You have to say it like that. Look at her.
with Dr. Lenore Todd from Leiden University, who will be sharing her talk Beyond Mulata, and that is on Monday, February 9th, so you can check out Studium General website for tickets and more information. So finally, round of applause for Hannah, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.